What's up, guys, and welcome to Mild versus the Movies, week number 4. I hope you've been enjoying this so far. I've been enjoying it. I say that I didn't enjoy my movie today, but we'll get into that later on. But yeah, I've been enjoying recording this. I've been enjoying doing it. I hope you guys all have. I'm enjoying reading your comments about why you think my opinions are trash or why you think a certain movie's great when I don't think it's great. It's always interesting seeing what other people get out of movies, I think, anyway. So we're going to jump into our first film, which was Hellboy, which I watched on DVD. Specifically, I watched the director's cut. The director is Guillermo del Toro, and this is from 2004. So for our plot summary, a demonic entity known as Hellboy defends Earth from dark forces led by Rasputin. There you go, a little concise plot summary for that movie. Let's go into our pros now. Firstly, I really like the tone of the movie. It was quite campy and goofy and fun. I feel like if this film took itself too seriously, it wouldn't be as enjoyable. The fact it's willing to have like a laugh at itself and how outlandish some of the characters are really makes it better. Secondly, I really enjoyed the practical effects in this movie. They're really good. Like Hellboy's all makeup and practical effects. Alex Sapien, the Fishman, he's a practical costume most of the time. They're just really good. I've got a real soft spot in my heart for practical effects because I always think they age a lot better than CGI. We'll get into that. But I've never been a big fan of CGI over practical. I think practical always looks better because it's more real. You know, it is tangible. Like you could touch. You could go up and hit Ron Perlman in the face, and he's got those horns sticking out his head. For my next pro, I thought the story was quite fun. It's quite interesting. It's quite a fun, like, superhero origin story. It's very well executed. The characters are interesting, and the way the story flows is quite good. So for my next pro, I really like the characters. They're quite interesting, quite different. They explore some quite interesting like dynamics and relationships that are quite fun. I like this a lot, if you can't tell. Next, for my next pro, I've got the sets were very good. There's quite a few like non-regular sets I would describe them as, and they all look really good. But I say like non-regular, I mean something that's not like, oh, an alley or a street or a house. There's quite a few more interesting locations we see, and they're all really good. For the next pro, this is like a minor thing, but just John Hurt being in this movie, I love John Hurt. He was great. And whenever he shows up in a movie, it automatically cheers me up, because he's always good. He's John Hurt. He's great. So that made me happy. So for my last pro, kind of tying into what I was just saying with John Hurt, this whole movie has a really excellent cast, because I like Ron Perlman in it. I like John Hurt, of course. I quite like Doug Jones doing the body of Alex Sapien, and kind of nicely uncredited is David Hyde Pierce doing his voice, who you probably know as Niles from Frasier, and he actually apparently refused to be credited because he was like, Doug Jones does all the physical stuff, it's his character, I'm just the voice of him. I was like, what a nice man. So onto the cons now. This is going back to what I mentioned with the practical effects. Some of the CG in this movie, I say some, a lot of the CG in this movie has aged pretty badly. And it's a shame, really. Because like I said, the practical effects are so strong. And then there's like 2004 CG next to it. You're like, oh man. Because sometimes the CG's not really bad, but sometimes you're a bit, oh man. Obviously, there are things that you can't do everything with practical effects, but it takes you out the movie a little, which is a bit of a shame. I'm sure at the time it wouldn't have been so bad, but now looking back at it, you're like, ooh. So overall, for my rating for this movie, I gave it a 7 out of 10. Do I think you should see it? Yes, you should if you've not, and especially if you like superhero movies. This is a really good one to watch. If you like Guillermo del Toro, you'll probably like it. So give it a watch, it was really good. Now, on to our second film, which was Hardcore Henry, which I watched on Netflix, directed by Ilya Naishuller from 2015. For our plot summary, we follow Henry from a first-person perspective, so we are Henry, as he attempts to rescue his wife in this action movie. So, I'm deliberately leaving my summaries very vague this week, I've noticed, because I don't want to give too much away for a lot of these movies. So I'm going to go into the pros of what I enjoyed about Hardcore Henry. Firstly, oh god, wish me luck for saying his name. Sharlto Copley, I think I nailed it, yes, is always good. And so it's very, very nice to have him in this. And he has a really prominent role. He's arguably, you can make a argument that he's actually the main character, because Henry doesn't speak. And we only ever see his arms or his legs occasionally. So Sharlto Copley kind of is the main character, and he's really interesting, and a really interesting character. He's very funny in this movie, like very, very funny. For those who don't know who Sharlto Copley is, I better explain who that is. That is the man from District 9, who, I can't mind his name in it, but I don't want to say, he's the main character in District 9. You know who he is. He's a South African guy in District 9. Well, most of them are South African because it's a South African movie, but he's the main one in District 9. So for my second pro, I thought some of the effects were really good. I don't want to get into too much in the way of spoilers, but some of the effects in this, pretty good, pretty gruesome as well. This is an 18, and it's definitely an 18. Don't, if you're a teenager, be like, oh, I'll watch this. I'll be cool, I'm 12. Don't watch this. Wait till you're older. Wait till your parents say you can watch it, then you can watch it. But getting back on point, yeah, the effects are pretty decent some of the time. You can guess where that's going into, but we'll come to that later. For my third pro, I thought the villain in this is really fun and really campy. The closest point of reference I would give for this guy is, if you've ever watched It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, there's an episode where they make Lethal Weapon 5, and Charlie plays Charlie plays a featured henchman, and this guy basically plays the German henchman that Charlie plays in Lethal Weapon 5 and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. If you've seen the episode, you'll get what I mean. Also the same character he plays in Lethal Weapon 6, which is even better. Oh man, I love that show. But yeah, this villain, he's very over the top. He's got a quite strong, I think, Russian accent. I don't know if he's Russian, actually. He is Russian, I just checked. But the way he delivers all his lines, the way he acts, is very over the top, and it's really good for an action movie. It's quite fun, actually. As a fourth positive, I really kind of enjoyed the story. It's quite fun. It was quite silly and over the top. Honestly, maybe a bit campy in a way. It felt very like it knew not to take itself too seriously, which I enjoy that in any action film. I think any film that takes itself too seriously and too po-faced when it's not dealing with serious things can come across a bit silly. Especially because the plot of this movie is quite outlandish. I went into this thinking it was just a normal action movie, so I was quite blindsided by just how unusual the movie is, and I quite liked it. But we're going to go into some cons now. So firstly, I know I said I really liked him, but I think the villain might be a little too campy. He might be a little too Charlie playing the German guy in Lethal Weapon 5 and 6. He might be a little too over the top. He might be a little too I'm evil. Henry, you'll never stop me, I'm evil. He doesn't talk like that, because he talks about a Russian accent, because he's Russian. But he might be a little too OTT for certain people, but I liked him. I thought he was fun. On to my second con now, and sadly it's a technical thing. With a first-person view, they do their best to not have the camera shaking. There's a lot of like parkour, there's a lot of like action scenes where you're flying about, getting thrown about buildings and that. And to be honest, by the end of the movie I was feeling sick. And that's not something I was hoping for. And it kind of spoiled it for me. It also has, I mentioned this in the favourite, and this is like the sole reason I didn't give the movie The Favourite a 10 out of 10, is it has a fisheye lens through the whole movie. And like I said, that makes me feel a bit queasy anyway. But when it's moving, I'm just like, oh. It does not agree. Like, even thinking about it's making me feel a bit sick. It kind of had a headache after I watched this movie. And it was a shame because I quite enjoyed. I would have enjoyed it if I wasn't feeling so queasy, I think. Onto my third con, some of the effects. I mentioned how good some of them are. And some of them are just really bad. It's quite bizarre in a way. Because some of them you're like, wow, this is like a really impressive effect for this kind of movie. It's not like a huge budget or anything. And then you come to another effect and you're like, that's terrible. And it'll be in the same scene. You'll be like, wow, that was really impressive looking. And then, wow, that looks like crap. It's very strange. It's like the budgeting on the effects was this guy gets, £20 and this guy gets £20 million, and then, they'll meet in the middle in terms of quality. No one will notice the bad ones. Because some of them are really good, and some of them are really bad. And there's no, consistency of it. Like I said, it's even in the same scene. So it's not like, oh, they hired a terrible effects guy, fired him, and then replaced him with a good effects guy. I just don't understand it. It's very strange to me. For my next con, there's a few, sadly, for Hardcore Henry. The glitch transitions are really annoying. So when they want to cut in a scene, with it being Henry's point of view, what they do is they kind of put this kind of glitchy transition on his face. So like that, like the video's like a video file that's been corrupted and it resumes again. And that happens quite a lot, and it's kind of annoying the first time it happens, and it happens like a lot in the movie, and it takes you out of it a bit. At least that was my experience. For my next con, this is probably my biggest con with the movie. I'm not really convinced by all the POV stuff. I like the idea. I like the idea of a first-person movie. But why is this movie in particular first person? At no point is there ever kind of it was in first person the whole time because blank. It just is. Do you know what I mean? I would have liked I think I would have liked it to more play into the plot somehow. Maybe some sort of twist about why it was in first person the whole time. I suppose there is kind of a reason, maybe, but it doesn't really factor into it. That's just my personal opinion anyway. So overall, I rated this movie a 5 out of 10. Mostly that's because of it making me feel kind of sick, which obviously that will spoil your enjoyment of any movie. Do I think you should see it? You should give it a try. Because I am quite prone to motion sickness. So you could probably watch it and have a fun old time to yourself. If it didn't make me sick, I think this movie would be more like a 7 out of 10. Because it's quite an enjoyable kind of B movie. And it's almost worth it for Charlton Copley. He's great. So yeah, I think you should maybe try it. But if you start feeling sick, turn it off. Because, it's not going to get better. If anything, it's going to get worse because there's going to be more action, so you're going to get thrown about more, so you're going to get more shook up. On to our next film, the third film I watched this week, which I watched on Tuesday the 22nd. I went to see Stan and Ollie in the cinema. This is directed by John S. Baird, and is from 2018. For a plot summary, we follow Laurel and Hardy, the famous comedy duo, in 1953 as they embark on a tour of the UK music halls while waiting for a movie to be financed. So on to my pros now. Straight away, I'm going to talk about the performances. John C. Reilly and Steve Coogan are both amazing in this. They are extremely convincing. John C. Reilly obviously has elements of prosthetics to play Oliver Hardy. But even then, he's like, the way he speaks, the way he acts, it all feels really convincing. In fact, there's even a scene right at the beginning that's a recreation of them filming a scene from an Oliver and Hardy movie. And they eventually tweeted that out as a side-by-side comparison of Oliver and Hardy's scene of it and what they filmed of that scene, side by side, and they're pretty much indistinguishable. Like Steve Coogan's like more a comedian, I think most people would class him as, rather than an actor. And he's really good as Laurel. I was really impressed, actually. They're both extremely good. They're both like very good at like the different emotions of the characters. It's really good performances by both of them. For my next pro, I think it's a very funny movie. In two senses, we've got the comedy scenes, for want of a better word, where we see them performing their show or doing Oliver and Hardy routines, and they're obviously funny because the material's still talked about nearly 100 years after the fact. It's pretty good. But even the scenes outside of that, where it's just them talking and going around on this tour, those are still funny as well. They're very funny, actually. For my next pro, I think it's got a really interesting story. It's a thing I didn't know about. I never knew Oliver and Hardy toured the UK. I thought that was really interesting. I was like, whoa, that'd be quite cool if you went to a music hall and got to see Oliver and Hardy do their routine. That would be amazing. I'd love to see that. But yeah, it's a very interesting story about something you didn't know about. It's quite interesting seeing this, friendship and pairing play out on the screen. It was really good. And for my fourth pro, I think it can be quite poignant at times. To me, it kind of reminds me of an episode of the show Inside Number 9. Now, Inside Number 9 is one of my favourite TV shows. It's like a little anthology thing, so each episode is a different self-contained story, and it's always set inside Number 9. So it'll be like, inside this house that's Number 9, or inside this hotel room that's Number 9, or something like that. And there's a particular episode that I'm thinking of which is called Bernie Clifton's Dressing Room. Now, I'm not going to spoil what that's about because, big no spoilers here. But it reminds me a lot of that because it's got that same kind of thing about double acts. And like, there's something about double acts that stories about them always kind of appeal to me. I think it's because when I was growing up, I was really into the two Ronnies, which is like a weird thing because like they weren't on the telly when I was a kid. I really like the two Ronnies. I don't know why. Probably because they're funny. But I just really like that classic kind of double act comedy. It's really good. I wish I had someone to be in a double act with me because I love double act comedy. It's really good. And they just always kind of strike a chord with me, those kinds of stories. So I really enjoyed this movie. Cons? I actually don't think I have any cons, again. I was like, when I gave Nightcrawler 10 out of 10, I thought, oh well, that'll be like the only 10 out of 10 for a while. I originally wrote 9 out of 10, and it doesn't quite feel like a 10. But thinking back on it, I've just upgraded it right now. I might have picked up on the microphone. I got out a pen, I clicked the pen, I upgraded 10 out of 10. I really like this movie. No, but I'll give it one minor con. I had the bloody Laurel and Hardy theme stuck in my head for 4 days after watching this movie. It's only in it like once, and I had it in my brain for 4 days. Good piece of music. Whoever composed that back in like 1920, you did a good job. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. It's maybe a bit, sentimental or whatever, but that doesn't mean it's bad. I really like this. I think you should go and see it if you get a chance. For my next film this week, I watched Rear Window from 1954. I watched it on a DVD from my Alfred Hitchcock set, which means, of course, it's directed by the man himself, Alfred Hitchcock. So for our plot summary, we follow L.B. Jeffries, played by James Stewart, who is a photographer who's in a wheelchair as he has a broken leg. He's stuck in his apartment, so to pass the time he watches his neighbours, and then he witnesses something that he shouldn't have. Or is it all in his mind? You'll have to watch the movie to find out. Oh, there's your trailer for the movie Rear Window, coming to a theatre near you about 60 years ago. We'll jump straight into the pros now. Firstly, the story was good. This is a really interesting movie. It's a really interesting plot. It's quite an interesting idea because this kind of ties into something I talk about later. I'll talk about it later. And by later, I mean right now, because my second pro is the suspense and tension in this movie. So, the idea of watching something and not being able to interfere in it, but seeing something unfold, is quite scary and quite tense. There are scenes in this. He really does. Alfred Hitchcock is like known as the master of suspense, and you can see why in this movie. It is very, very tense at points. You've got certain scenes where you're like, oh no, this is going to end badly. Because in a way, you're almost trapped in that apartment with LB, or just Jeff. I think it's usually just called Jeff in the movie. You're kind of trapped in there with him, because I don't think, apart from the very beginning and the very end, you don't leave the apartment the whole movie. It's quite an impressive feat. It's a very good piece of filmmaking. But yeah, it's very tense the whole time. So you're watching all these things and you can't interfere in them. You're like, oh no. So thirdly, tying into this again, all my points are tying into each other for this one. But I thought it's incredibly well filmed. As I mentioned, like every shot in this movie is kind of... No, every shot in this movie isn't kind of. It is filmed from his apartment. Because I'll get into this later on. All the plot points are tying together. All the positives, they all tie together. It's like it's a good movie if all the things work together well. But the fact you're kind of trapped in this apartment with him, it makes him more of like an audience surrogate, even though he's got like a quite amazing life. He's like a cool newspaper photographer guy who got injured in a car accident where he wasn't injured in the car accident. The car in a racetrack crashed and hit him. That's like quite an outlandish story, but he's perfectly relatable, which is quite impressive, really. In particular as well, I quite like how there's a certain bit of the conclusion. I really like how that's filmed. I don't want to spoil what it is, but it's well, I won't say anything about it. But I do quite like how the conclusion is. Not the very end, if you're watching it. Not the very, very end. I don't dislike how that's filmed. But a particular point of the conclusion is something I really like how it was filmed. It's very, very tense. See, they all tie together in this movie. So for my fourth pro, I thought this movie is actually quite funny at times. I was expecting it to have quite so many laughs in a mystery thriller. But there you go. In particular, there is a insurance nurse who comes to his house to look after him, called Stella. She's very funny. She's got a lot of funny lines in this movie. But yeah, it has got quite a few laughs in it. A lot more than I was expecting. I was expecting to be quite on the edge of my seat the whole time. So it's quite... You kind of need them in any sort of thriller or a very tense movie. You need them to kind of... Well, first of all, to lull you into a sense of security. But also you need it to break the tension. Because otherwise, you kind of become numb to it. Kind of become numb to this terrifying situation. That's why like horror films have the comic relief character. So you're like, oh, crazy Eddie. He's out there doing something crazy. And then, oh no, here comes Driller Killer. Why do I keep going back to Driller Killer? What a strange movie to keep bringing up. I'm going to have to watch it because I've never actually seen it. I just always remember the name. Because it sounds like the name someone... It sounds like someone was like, oh, I'm working on a horror film right now. They're like, oh really? What's it called? The Driller Killer. Like someone was just lying about working in movies, and then they had to make the movie Driller Killer. That's what happened because they talked themselves up at a dinner party. Getting back on track, my next pro is I liked how the score in the movie is all music within the movie itself. So as in, there's a composer who lives in the apartment complex. So usually the music we're hearing is him trying out music on his piano. That's the score. There's not any stuff getting dubbed in, except for right in the opening credits. Once the movie starts proper, everything is from the world of the movie. And I like that in a movie. It's very clever to do. And it kind of helps with it being trapped in that room with him. Because we do feel like you're trapped in the room with him, because you never leave it. The whole movie, it's incredible. For my next pro, this is a technical thing, but the set in this movie is amazing. I just wanted to talk about it because of how amazing it is. So, it's 5 stories tall. So they built an apartment complex in a film studio. So it's 5 stories tall. They ripped out the basement of the studio. They ripped up all the floor. So his flat, James Stewart's flat that we're in for the whole movie, that is on the ground floor of the studio, but it's on the second floor of the building because the basement is where some of the things are. It's kind of crazy. Like, the apartments, you could actually live in some of them because the water ran and the water ran and there was heating in them. So one of the actresses, who all the people in the distance, like all the neighbours, he doesn't know their names, so he just gives them like nicknames. So she's Miss Torso. She's like a dancer. The actress who plays her lived in the apartment while they were shooting the movie because she's like, hey, why not? That's another detail. I like how we don't really know any of the characters' names. It's like Mr. Salesman, Mrs. Salesman, Mrs. Lonely Heart, the Mrs. Torso. What were the other ones? They all have names like that. I like Miss Lonely Hearts. That's a really good name. And Miss Hearing Aid. Who's Miss Hearing Aid? We're just looking at the credits. I don't remember Miss Hearing Aid at all. I mean, some of them we don't even... I just noticed that. One of them is just called Woman on Fire Escape and Man on Fire Escape. And they're like characters that show up all the time, and we just never learn their real names. Can't work out who Miss Hearing Aid is. Very strange. But yeah, this movie's really good. So, on to my con now. Con, singular. I do have one. I do think the ending might be a little abrupt. Now, I know this movie is incredibly highly regarded. Like, its meta score is 100. So I don't want people being like, oh, you don't get it. Not that people think I don't get it. But I just personally, I find the ending a bit like, oh, this is what happened the whole time. There you go. That's the end of the movie. Bye. You know, it kind of has that kind of ending. And I was a bit like, oh, I was enjoying that. It's not I necessarily want like the film to be longer or anything. I just wish the ending wasn't quite so, oh, here's the answer to the question, here's that, blah, 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 done. I would have liked it a bit more, not like the ending in Psycho, where you get like the 5-minute scene where the guy tells you everything. I hate that scene. I hate that guy. I prefer the scene directly after that in Psycho. There's a guy in Psycho who shows up at the end and he basically tells you what happened in the movie if you didn't get it. And I'm like, it's pretty obvious what happened in the movie Psycho. Maybe not in 1962 when Psycho came out, I think. I think it was 62. Hope it was so I look like a real movie nerd. It was 1960. Damn. I was 2 years out. I'm not a real movie nerd. Sorry, guys. Feel free to not watch the video anymore. Please don't, because I actually like people watching these videos. But yeah, that was my one con. For my overall rating of the movie, I gave it a 9 out of 10. Do I think you should see it? Yes. Go out of your way to see this. It's really good. It's really enjoyable. And I think you'll enjoy it. For our next movie, I watched The Accountant on Amazon Prime, directed by Gavin O'Connor from 2016. For our plot summary, we follow an accountant who is a math savant as he uncooks the books of criminal enterprises, as he finds where their money went if it's gone missing. The Treasury, however, has begun to close in on him and his illegal deeds. So for the pros of this movie, I really enjoyed the opening third, where we're seeing him go to a robotics company to find who's been cooking their books. That's quite interesting. We see him going about his day-to-day life. The character Ben Affleck's playing has a high-functioning autism, so we see him coping with that. I don't know how realistic a portrayal it is. Someone might tell me if they've seen it, but I thought it was alright. And for my next pro, I thought it was quite nice to have John Lithgow and J.K. Simmons in a movie. Two actors I really enjoy. They were both quite fun in this, so I quite liked seeing them. I wish there was a bit more of them in it, though, to be fair. I wish there was more J.K. Simmons. He's not in it enough for me. Not like as in I want the whole runtime to be J.K. Simmons. I wouldn't mind that, but I feel like he could have been in it more. Maybe utilised a bit more, but that's just me. Now onto the cons. We're on the cons already. I had two pros. Gives you an idea of what I thought of this movie. Firstly, the music choices in this movie are bizarre. They just don't seem to fit with the movie. So we get one point where they use like Rockabye Baby, and I still don't get why. I just didn't understand it. I don't get what they were going for with it. Secondly, I think the plot of this movie becomes insanely dull the minute it becomes an action movie. So to start off with, you're kind of got a crime movie where you're focusing on, like criminal accountants. That's kind of interesting. That's not something that's been done before. And then it just turns into an action movie, and not a very good action movie. A bad action movie. For my third con, there's a twist in this movie. And I know people always say, I saw that twist coming straight away. The first frame that you could possibly work out what the twist is. So I'm talking about maybe 15 minutes into the movie, I knew what the twist was. 15 minutes in. And this is the twist at the end of the movie, where the movie's like, oh my god, what a twist. To the point, I wasn't even sure if it was meant to be a twist. Now, I don't want to say what it was, but I thought the story was going in a completely different direction. I thought it was a cooperation, what he was doing. And then it wasn't. And then that was a twist, and I was like, I thought that was obvious. I thought that was the whole point of the story. It just wasn't really good, and it kind of soured me on the movie quite a bit. For I was already quite soured on it. For my next con, this is a thing I mentioned in the past, but Annihilation, I felt really wanted to be a rival. I feel sorry for saying that about Annihilation now, because as much as Annihilation wants to be a rival, the accountant wants to be John Wick so badly. You can smell it a mile away the minute it becomes an action movie. It's like, please mention me in the same sentence as John Wick. Is what this movie is doing. Except John Wick was interesting. John Wick was well choreographed. John Wick had interesting characters, and the characters don't even John Wick doesn't really have much of a personality, except for I'm angry and I'm gonna kill you. But he is more interesting than the other characters in this movie. All the characters are quite boring in this. Even J.K. Simmons is weird. His character, it doesn't really make sense. I wasn't a fan of this movie. I've got another con here where I've just got boring. That's how I would describe this movie, is it's boring. And it's an action movie. They're gunshots, they're fight scenes, and I'm bored. I couldn't get over how bored I was by it. I even got it again as another con here, where I've got, it just is uninteresting after it stops being a film about accounting. When it stops being a film about advanced maths, the film becomes less interesting. Think about that. I didn't enjoy this movie at all, if you can tell. Well, I was enjoying it. I was enjoying it for a good half hour, say. And then when it turns into the action movie, my interest plummeted. It just lost me completely. And then like at the end where there's that twist, and I saw it coming from the first scene, I was like, oh, this was a bad movie. So overall, I gave this a 4 out of 10. Do I think you should see it? I guess you should, because most other people think this movie's amazing. Like, if you look at it on IMDb, it's got a 7.3 out of 10. It's got a 51 Metascore. I thought it was awful. It was boring. It was bland. The characters weren't interesting. The story wasn't interesting. The twist I saw from the very beginning. So there was no, oh wow. I just didn't enjoy it. So I wouldn't recommend it. If you maybe fancy it, watch it yourself, but go into it knowing that you might not like it, because I didn't at all. I was quite disappointed. For the film I watched on the 25th of January, I watched What We Do in the Shadows, again on Amazon Prime, and we've used a lot of Amazon Prime this week, directed by Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi, I hope I've said that right, from 2014. For our plot summary, we follow 4 vampires, Vladislav, Viago, Peter, and Deacon, who are currently living in a house in Wellington, New Zealand. As they go about their lives, it's a mockumentary, so we're, following them like that, in that sense. And it's kind of in the months leading up to a big ball that all the undead community go to in the New Zealand, well, in Wellington, I think, I can't remember what they call it, the Undead Masquerade Ball. There is. So, for my first pro, this movie is very, very funny. So it is a comedy, as well as being, it says comedy horror. I don't really know it is a horror. Maybe a little, but it's mostly a comedy. It is really funny. I laughed a lot during this. I laughed a lot during it. I laughed quite loudly at it. There's a lot of scenes that are really funny in it. It was a really, really good comedy. For my second pro, I think this movie looks incredibly good, especially for the modest budget. This cost a little over $1 million to make. I think it was 1.2. And you would know it from looking at it. You've got, for example, Peter is like a Nosferatu-esque vampire. So he's got, he has the ears and the teeth and the long fingers and the hands and the face. So he's like basically a full prosthetic and makeup. And like this relatively low budget movie, and it's very impressive. You've got like quite impressive costumes. You've got a quite impressive set. I don't know if they just found some like old house to film in, or if it's a set they purposefully built, but either way, it's still impressive. You've got lots of wire shots in this movie because the vampires can fly in it, because vampires can fly. Well, sometimes it depends whose vampire story it is, but these vampires can fly. So you've got lots of things of them going around on wires that are really well done. You've got a scene similar to the one in Inception with a rotating hall. So, they're fighting up the walls and on the ceiling and round like that. That is in this movie that cost $1 million. And that was in Inception, and that cost a lot more than $1 million. For the budget, this is an amazing accomplishment. It is really technically impressive. As my third pro, I think the characters are all very interesting. It's quite fun seeing something of like such a supernatural aura as like a vampire that get into like a domestic dispute with their flatmates. It's so funny. I've just even the poster is like hilarious. It is hilarious. Just to chime in with every other critic, but it is really funny. This movie's great. For my next pro, I thought the story in this was actually quite good. Now, usually in comedy films, I don't really have many points to talk about, and especially story doesn't really come up, because a lot of comedy films, the story doesn't matter. The story's just, this is how we deliver these jokes via the medium. Like, I've written a funny joke about cars. This is the Cannonball Run. I've written this funny scene about... I'm trying to think of like a movie that's more like that. I wrote a funny joke about the narration in a police movie. Oh, I'll make Police Squad. You know, something like that. Where like the story is like the last priority, it's the jokes first, which obviously makes sense in a comedy movie. This has actually quite a good, interesting story. Like, you know, you've got interesting character dynamics, you've got each of the vampires has like a bit of a backstory to them, like they have motivations, they feel quite real people, even though they're vampires. They feel quite believable. I think that kind of ties into the whole, like, seeing their domestic life kind of makes them feel a bit more real, a bit more relatable. This movie is really good, if you can tell. I really enjoyed this. My only con for this movie is I wish it was a bit longer. It's only an hour and a half, and I can get why it's an hour and a half, because, you know, you don't have much money. It's like, I think it's even less than an hour and a half. I just wanted more of it. And I think that's actually quite a good negative to have. Like, I think a lot of movies would be quite happy with make more of this movie. But, you know, if it was like, if it was just like 10 or 15 minutes longer, I would have been even happier. I can get why it's that length, because, you know, it was made on a low budget. So for my overall rating, for What We Do in the Shadows, I gave it an 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed this movie. Do I think you should see it? Yes. Even if you're a bit, oh no, horror, I don't know about that. I did like a hand symbol with that. I like shook my hands, like did little jazz hands. That's me when I'm scared. Even if you're put off by the horror element, it's very minor. I think calling it a comedy horror is a bit... It's a comedy about horrors, maybe, about things that would be in a horror film. No, even then it's not. It's just a comedy that happens to have vampires in it. I think you should see it. I think it was really fun. I really enjoyed it. I'll watch it again quite happily. I'd actually quite happily watch it again right now, and I only saw it on Friday, and it's Sunday, when this video goes out. Damn, breaking the illusion. Oh, I'm delaying this next movie. Let's get it over with. So on Saturday, I watched Howard the Duck on Netflix, directed by Willard Huyck. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name, but I'm choosing to pronounce it Huyck, like that. From 1986. So for my plot summary, Howard, who is an alien duck, is trapped on Earth, and he tries to get back home to Duck World, I think. I don't know if that actually is the name of his planet. He never really explicitly says. With the help of Beverly, who is a pop singer who is the first human who discovers him in an alleyway, basically. On to my one and only pro. There is a prolonged stop motion effect sequence in the end of this movie, and that's really good. I say that at certain times it's not been green screened out of its background properly, and you can it's really apparent it's been pasted on to the film you're watching, but it is still a very good effect. That is the one good thing in this movie. Some of the other effects are alright. Their ILM is doing them, so it's, you know, Industrial Light and Magic, so they should be good. Should is the operative word. A lot of them are that kind of... I don't know, I can't remember the proper name for them. It's the effects like the proton packs in the Ghostbusters, where they're kind of like drawn on and bright neon colours. There's a lot of stuff like that. Now on to the cons. That's right, we had one pro. We're on to the cons already. So firstly, the humour in this movie. Now I said how What We Do in the Shadows was hilarious and was really funny. This is honestly the least funny comedy I've seen in my entire life. Now this movie is 2 hours long. 2 very long hours long. And I never laughed once in the duration of this 2-hour movie. In fact, no, I tell a lie, I did laugh once. We'll get into that. I think I mentioned this later. No, I don't. So it kind of gets covered by this point. So we'll get into the one thing I laughed at. At one point, there is a goddamn Casablanca reference, and it's so out of nowhere. I didn't laugh at it as in, haha, like Casablanca. I laughed at it in a, what is this movie doing? Why is it making a reference to Casablanca? Because Howard the Duck says to Beverly, of all the alleys in the world, why did I have to fall into yours? And directly before this, we have Tim Robbins make a reference to, I think it's from something else originally, but it's in Raging Bull, where he goes, I could have been a contender. So you get, I could have been a contender, and then cut to straight away, why, of all the alleys in the world, why did I have to fall into yours? And it was such a, like, I think that was the point my brain kind of broke. And I was like, this movie exists. Multiple people made this, you know? It wasn't just one crazy guy. A studio made this movie. I realised that the bad films, it's like, one crazy guy kind of made The Incredible Bulk. A crazy guy made Manos. The Asylum made Megafall. And now we're up to Howard the Duck. This was made by a real movie studio. Real people made this. Real actors are in this movie. Tim Robbins is in The Shawshank Redemption. People consider that one of the best movies ever made. It's on my list, by the way. List of films to watch. Like, good ones, obviously. And he's in Howard the Duck. We'll get on to him later. But yeah, the humour is terrible. None of the jokes are funny. Most of the opening sequence is like 5 minutes long. Howard in his duck house, in the duck world, his duck apartment, and it's all duck puns. It's all duck puns. So he has a poster for the movie Splash Dance, because ducks water splash. Ducks. We'll get into this later as well, but I'll save that for later. But there's a terrible pun in one of the jokes in this that's just atrocious. There's one of the posters. He has a poster for Indiana Jones, the first Indiana Jones. Now, think Raiders of the Lost Ark. How would I make that a duck pun? Of course, I would make it Breeders of the Lost Stork. That joke doesn't even make sense. His card is a Master Duck instead of a MasterCard. This whole movie is just one long duck pun, and none of them are funny. And the worst thing was, I thought of, oh, this will be like a predictable duck pun while I was watching the movie, and it never came up, and I was genuinely kind of disappointed. Because I thought someone was going to go, like a villain was going to go to Howard, oh, your goose is cooked, mate. You know, that expression meaning like, you know, your number's up, you've lost. And then Howard would go, I'm a duck, and then punch him in the face, like an action movie. And that never happens. And I was like, I can't believe I thought of a better line than any of the jokes in Howard the Duck. Like, all the jokes are terrible. There's like one part where they go to a Cajun sushi restaurant, and I thought, this might be funny. And nothing ever comes of it. There's a lot of things in it, it's just like, hey, wouldn't this be a joke? Moving on, and you're like, what? Why didn't you make a joke there, movie? That's where the joke goes. Oh man, this was made by Universal Studios. I just keep wanting to mention that Universal made this. Universal. That's like a real studio and everything. So we've got the terrible humor out of the way. I think I've covered just how bad it is. Like, I can't understate how bad it is. It really isn't funny. Now on to the second thing. So this movie's rated PG. It has a disturbing amount of sex jokes. And I mean, not as in the, oh, wink wink nudge nudge parents, here's a joke for the parents the kids won't get. So we'll start with the one right at the beginning that I mentioned. I mentioned the terrible puns. So Howard arrives back at his house. He has a copy of Play Duck. Really? And I'm like, so that's the thing. A lot of the jokes in it don't make sense in like the sense of it. So like Breeders of the Lost Stork. That movie has nothing to do. It's not called. Well, I there's no way you can make that into humans because humans breed and they still have the stork myth. But you know what I mean? It's changing things that don't make sense to be changed. So it's not like, oh, Howard's a police duck. You know, rather than a policeman or a policewoman or a police officer. It doesn't work with that. But, like, play duck. Like, there are two... There's playboy and playgirl, you know? Surely it should be whatever the term for a female duck is. I don't know. It's a drake for a male duck. What's a female duck called? So I just looked that up. Apparently, a female duck is just a duck. But a male duck is a drake. But a female duck in ornithology is a hen. That's just confusing. Why is a duck a male duck and a female duck, but a male duck gets his own special name? I'm not saying anything. It's kind of sexist. Society. I'm judging you, ducks. But yeah, so he opens, like, he gets play duck. He opens it at the bloody centerfold. And there's a sexy picture of a duck lady. Well, not as a picture I find sexy, but a picture that is meant to be sexy of a duck lady. And you're like, what the hell, movie? So then, when he gets sucked through a portal to Earth world, or Earth as we like to call it, so he's sitting in like his recliner chair, he gets dragged through his neighbour's apartment, and we see a lady duck taking a bath, because she's just called a duck apparently. That's weird, but she's just taking a bath, and we see duck boobs. This movie has duck boobs in it. This PG movie has breasts in it on a duck. I can't even begin to describe my reaction to those. I was like, what is going on? This movie's like 10 minutes in. There's also an ad for having a smelly crotch. Again, all this is in a PG kids movie. I really need to emphasize that. I'm not usually someone for being like... I'm not like a prude or anything like that. But it's so excessive in this movie. Like, at one point... So, what's her name? I just called her love interest, because that's kind of what she is. We'll get into that. Love interest. The human character. But she's going through Howard's wallet. That's where we see the master duck. God, I hate that so much. And she finds an unwrapped condom in his wallet. And you're like, who would keep... First of all, who keeps unwrapped condoms in their wallet? You're bloody gross. Second of all, what? This is a kids' movie. Then, also, in the scene shortly after that, she acts like she's gonna have sex with a duck. And she's like, oh, it's a joke, Howard, it's a joke. And you're like, I don't think it was. And then later on, at the end of the movie... Okay, I'm gonna just skip to the end of the movie. You don't care about this movie, don't see this movie. At the end, we get the Howard the Duck song performed by the band that Beverly's in. Every time I refer to her, I have to look down at my notes to remember her name. That's how interesting a character she is. She's kind of 80s girl love interest. But yeah, so she's performing the Howard the Duck theme song. It's like, Howard the Duck, dun 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 dun, Howard the Duck, dun 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 dun. Like that. It's really, really good song. It won the Razzie for worst song. To give you an idea of how good a song is. So, Howard the Duck, dun dun dun. And then she finishes her performance, and she goes backstage to Harold. I knew I called him Harold the Duck. Harold the Duck. That's my spin-off. She goes backstage to Howard, and she's like, oh, thanks for managing our band now, because he's a manager. Because I predicted he would give up going to his planet to save his love interest lady about 20 minutes in the movie, because I had to take regular breaks because of how bad this movie is. I went to talk to my mum, and I was like, he's going to give up going back to Duck Planet to save his love interest. That's going to happen. Or she's going to go back with him. And that exact thing happens. He gives up going back to save his love interest. And I was like, I know the bad movies. It was just terrible. But yeah, so he's talking to her backstage at the concert, and they get quite close to each other, and like she's touching him on like the chest, and rapid fade out, movie's over, end credits. And I was like, there was more to that scene. She kissed that duck And it was in the test screening, and everyone was so freaked out by the fact that the human wants to have sex with the duck. And they cut it out. I'm coming into that point later on. I've got a whole section about it. We'll get into that later. We're sticking with lots of sex jokes. It's really, really inappropriate. There's also a bit where in Howard first arrives on Earth, he gropes a random lady. And not just like her leg, he gets like right up the butt. Not like right up, not up the butt, but like he is hand on butt cheek, you know? It is inappropriate in this kid's, but it's really weird. It's like it's made by a gosh darn sex pervert. It's unsettling. Alright, my next point is the duck-human relationship, so we'll get straight into that. So my next con is the really, really gross anthropomorphic duck-human relationship in this movie. So, like I said, Bev is his love interest. So she's like, I don't know, like a 20-year-old girl, maybe? Maybe. She might be younger than that. Howard, you disgusting pervert. But it's really gross and kind of out of nowhere. And it's not just, it's a romance between two different species, because you can do that well in a movie. It has been done well in a movie. It's won Oscars in movies. But the thing is, it's not a romantic relationship between the two of them. It is she wants to fuck that duck. As crude a turn of phrase that is, that's what she wants. She wants to have sex with the duck. It's not a romantic thing. She wants to do it with a duck. She wants to do the disco duck. Also, that song is not in this movie, which surprised me. It has every other duck thing. It's got cartoons of Daffy Duck, and it's duck hunting season on the telly, and he makes Donald Duck noise. Go like, wah! I can't do Donald Duck. I hurt my throat earlier today, and I can't do a Donald Duck impression. Anyway, but that's not going to help. But yeah, it's really gross and really inappropriate, and this movie's for children, you know? Well, it's a PG, so it's meant for everyone. And no one, except maybe whoever wrote the human duck romance, really wants to see the human duck romance. I don't think so, anyway. Apparently, just bring up this little anecdote, because I like looking up the trivia. Apparently, this movie was so bad when it got test screened for Universal's executives, they all watched the movie ends. Like normally they're like, I like how in the motion picture you need to put more emphasis on the Spider-Man or something like that. That's my movie executive impression. But it was apparently so bad, the executives got up, having watched Howard the Duck, and left the room and didn't say a word. And I can believe it. And apparently there's a rumour, they both deny it, but apparently two of Universal's executives had a fist fight over who was to blame for Howard the Duck. You're like, what the hell? Imagine having a fist fight over who's to blame for green lighting Howard the Duck. What a life. Oh man. So moving on to my next con now. Tim Robbins is one of the most annoying characters I've ever seen in a movie. The only way I would describe him is Tim Robbins is playing Rob Schneider. Now I can't prove this, but I am 100% convinced that this character that Tim Robbins plays in Howard the Duck was written for Rob Schneider. It's got that kind of... Picture Rob Schneider in Dredd if he was a scientist. That is the character played by Tim Robbins in this movie. He's got that kind of, wow, this is really wacky situation. I'm wacky. Oh, I'm a quirky guy. I'm so wacky. I'm Tim Robbins. I'm a science man. Oh, Howard, me and you could be millionaires. I talked to these crazy astrophysicists who think the Aztecs came from Mars. Oh, I'm wacky. He is really annoying in the whole movie. And that's saying something, because this whole movie is annoying. So for my next con, I mentioned the good stop motion and the alright Ghostbuster lasers. All the effects in this movie are terrible. There's actually some decent makeup effects on, like Jeffrey Johns gets possessed, and his makeup effects are pretty good. It's like he gets all like melty, I guess. I don't know. Like his skin like all starts to peel and that. That's like a nice effect. And like most of the other effects are good. But the main problem and the worst effect is Howard the Duck in every scene. And it's bizarre because you're like, that's the main character. Surely that's the effect you would spend the most time and the most money on. So Howard the Duck most of the time is a guy in a suit. So like a person play with like a suit on and like the bill goes bah, 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 you know, like that. And like the eyes are like controlled some way. And it's terrible. It looks plasticky. And I'm like, it has fillers on it, but it somehow looks plasticky. I don't know what's going on with that. Most of the time, the bill doesn't sync with what's being said. A lot of the time, the bill is just kind of open. So he just looks like he has a gormless like thing going on. Like he's got nothing going on in his brain. This is meant to be our protagonist, and he looks like an idiot. And sometimes, I don't know if he is. I couldn't find anything about this. I quickly checked the trivia. So I looked it up, and I can't find anything either way. But there are certain points where I'm 80% sure that the Howard the Duck is portrayed by a puppet. And even that, it's got like... It's really badly puppeteered. It's like... like... It kind of puppeteers almost like... It's like watching Kermit the Frog. If Kermit the Frog was a duck. Not way Kermit the Frog enemies is like... like that. It's not that level, but it's right at the end. There's also part of the thing I looked up was apparently George Lucas spent $2 million on the Howard the Duck suit. $2 million, and it's the worst effect in the movie. Unbelievable. Because like good animatronics exist. You made Star Wars. There are lots of them in that. What are you doing, George? George, come on, man. Oh. So I've got two more cons here. And I'm just going to kind of combine them into one because the plot is incredibly dumb. The plot is just kind of a series of events that happen. And there's like a lot of things happen, so X can happen, so Y can happen, so Z can happen, so the end of the movie can happen. For example, there's a scene where they go to the Cajun sushi diner, because that's so funny. It shows you how desperate I was for a laugh that I thought this might be funny inside here. So what it is it's a diner. There's nothing really Cajun about it, and the chef is a Japanese man, and the waiters have like cowboy outfits on. I guess that's the Cajun bar, and like samurai headbands. And that's the joke. They don't even serve sushi or Cajun food. They serve him like breakfast, and then he gets freaked out by eggs, because of course he would. So like in that scene, Howard gets discovered by some people, and they steal this key code thing from him, so we can have Jeffrey Johns kill a bunch of people because he's the villain. So we can have him get that back. So we can have this happen. So we can have a scene where he kidnaps the girlfriend. So we can have Howard the Duck go and stop him. So we can have the end of the movie. See what I mean? It's one of those movies where so we can have that happen. It feels like the plot isn't so much an interesting story to be told. It's more a device to get to the end of the story, you know? Nothing happens for not a purpose, but in a bad way. Oh, I hate this movie so much. And tying into that, the dumb characters. So, Jeffrey Johns gets possessed by a demon thing. So there's a big explosion at this space laser that brought Howard down when they fired it and something went wrong. So they fired it and something went wrong, and last time Howard the Duck came down. And even go like, oh, something else might come down. So they're with Jeffrey Johns, he's normal, he's driving his car, and then he starts going like, I am possessed, Jeffrey Johns, He's doing a bit like a picture like the girl in The Exorcist if it was a 40-year-old man. He's like, I am possessed now, I am evil, like that. And they're just like, oh, whatever, mate. And we're like, what is this? Like, how can you not recognize he's talking in a different voice? And like, is acting very strange. It's very weird. And even before, he's like, oh no, I'm, in trouble, you've got to help me. And like, they're like, yeah, whatever, mate. Watch, everyone's in trouble when you're driving. That's a real joke in this movie. That's a real joke. I really hate this movie so much. I don't know if it comes across, but it's really bad. And this is another thing I've written. This is a technical thing. So this movie takes place in Cleveland. I forgot Cleveland was a suburb of Los Angeles because I've never been to LA, and it is so blatant this film is filmed in LA. Every city shot, you're like, I've seen this city in about 20 other movies. They were all filmed in LA, and most of them are set in LA. You don't go, oh, right, I'm gonna film this movie in Paris. Oh, but it's set in Munich. Oh, look, there's the cityscape of Munich, and then like the Eiffel Tower's in it. It's ridiculous. It's so blatantly not Cleveland and blatantly LA. It's really jarring because it's like, no, you're not. You're not Cleveland. I think that's my last con. I don't know if I have anything else to talk about this movie, except how bad it was. It was awful. Did I mention Tim Robbins is in this and he's terrible? It's too bad. Oh. So my overall rating, this may shock you, was a 0 out of 10. I think this might be the worst movie I've watched so far. I know I've said that every week, but somehow they have progressively got worse. No, that's not true. I liked Manos more than Amazing Bulk. Manos is probably the best worst so far, and without a shadow of a doubt, I think Howard the Duck was the worst. I didn't get as angry as I got with Megafall, but I think that's worse because at least I felt something with Megafall. This I just felt like I was dead for 2 hours. I had to stop it twice to get up and like think about my life. And one of the times I literally stopped it, sat down, started it again, and then it was the almost sex scene. And I was like, oh my god, I need to stop it again. But I didn't. I persevered. Because then I'm reading he apparently auditioned to be Howard the Duck on IMDb and didn't get it. I'm like, wonder if he regrets that. I could have been in one of the worst films ever made. It's terrible. I despise it. Do I think you should watch it? No. Not even as a curiosity, I don't think you should watch it. It was terrible. It was unenjoyable. It was really crass, and it almost made me feel like uncomfortable, is how I would describe it. The way it's so sexual and a kids thing, it really made me quite uncomfortable. I don't know if that's just me, but it's really like, ugh, stop. So never watch Howard the Duck. So we're on to my concluding of the video. Hooray! What was my favourite movie of the week? I don't know. Probably Stan and Ollie. I'll say Stan and Ollie. A lot of good movies this week, actually. Rear Window was really good. Stan and Ollie was really good. Hellboy was good. Hardcore Henry I would have liked if it wasn't for the POV and more so the fisheye, because fisheye lens really makes me it's when I notice the curves at the side of the screen. So like the way, if you look at if you look at something that's filmed with fisheye lens, if you look at the corner of the screen, something that's a straight line, so like a door frame, for example, will instead be curved like a C. If it's on the left-hand side of the screen, it'll be curved like a C. That doesn't agree with me. But I don't know if it's to do with my motion sickness, but yeah. Hardcore Henry was still quite enjoyable even for that. The Accountant was boring trash. What We Do in the Shadows was fun. Howard the Duck was complete trash. So I think I'll go for Stan and Ollie was my favourite of the week. It could have easily been Rear Window, but I think I like Stan and Ollie more, because I like things about double acts. I enjoyed it, it was fun. So today, what am I watching today, you're probably wondering, on Sunday the 27th of January? I'm going to watch You Were Never Really Here on Amazon Prime, directed by Lynn Ramsey, starring Joaquin Phoenix. So that'll be fun. Well, I don't think it'll be fun. I think it's actually a quite hard-going movie, so it'll be an experience, and hopefully it'll be a good movie. I've heard good things about it, so I hope I enjoy it. Well, not enjoy it, but, I hope it's a good movie. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'd love to hear your opinions on Howard the Duck. Maybe you're one of the people who thinks this movie's good, because there are people who are like, this is an underrated cult classic, and I'm like, if you're a goddamn duck pervert. Sorry, I said the phrase "a goddamn duck pervert." That's amazing. But maybe you enjoyed some of these movies. Maybe you didn't enjoy some of these movies. I like hearing about that. Obviously, any recommendations you have, like hearing those. I've got quite a lot of them so far. Obviously, I'm not going to get to all of them because some of them I might look at the film and go, "Not my type of film." If you want to see all the stuff I do, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel and see all of my other videos as well. If you enjoyed this, you could give it a like or decide to comment. So that just leaves me to say, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Goddamn duck pervert.